The day started like any other. I woke up to the sound of the alarm clock next to Emily, my wife of 10 years. She still slept peacefully, her hair spread across the pillow like a golden halo. For a moment, I stood there, watching her, before getting up carefully so as not to wake her. I prepared breakfast for us and our daughter, Lily, who would soon come downstairs with her 8-year-old smile, lighting up the kitchen. After a quick kiss goodbye to Emily and a tight hug to Lily, I left for work. I'm an engineer at a technology company, and that day, appointments flowed more quickly than usual. So I decided to leave early and enjoy a few extra hours with my family. Little did I know that this innocent impulse would change everything. When I arrived home, the door was ajar, something unusual. I felt a slight discomfort, but I carried on. As I entered, I heard Emily's voice coming from upstairs. She was on the phone, but the tone of her voice made me stop. There was something different, an urgency that didn't match the Emily I knew. I decided not to announce my arrival and climbed the steps, stepping carefully so as not to make any noise. As I approached the room, his words became clearer. "I'll find a way to get rid of him soon." My heart stopped for a moment. I felt like a knife was piercing my chest. Emily's voice, so familiar and loved, now carried a betrayal I couldn't imagine. I stood there, motionless, as she continued her conversation, laughing and speaking with an intimacy I've never seen directed at anyone other than myself. After hanging up the phone, Emily came out of the room and almost saw me. I managed to hide in time, still stunned by what I heard. I quickly descended the stairs, my mind spinning with 1,000 thoughts. Was the woman I loved and trusted plotting against me? And worse, she seemed to be involved with another man. When Emily finally came downstairs, I pretended to be busy in the kitchen. "Hi, love. You're early today," she said with a smile. The same smile that melted me every day now seemed like a mask. "Yes, I thought I'd spend more time with you," I replied, trying to remain calm. Lily soon joined us, and I did my best not to let my inner turmoil show. During dinner, my mind worked incessantly. Confronting her there, in front of our daughter, was not an option. I needed proof. I needed to understand what was happening before making any decisions. That night, while Emily slept, I discreetly installed a recording app on her phone. Every tap on the screen felt like a step toward the truth, no matter how painful it was. In the days that followed, I observed Emily with new eyes. Every gesture, every word, every smile seemed loaded with ulterior motives. I pretended to be normal, but inside I was falling apart. Every time she picked up the phone, my heart raced, fearing what I might find out. However, he needed to continue. He needed to gather enough evidence to unmask her once and for all. The nights became endless. I lay next to her, listening to her regular breathing, while my mind reviewed every detail, every word I heard. The love I felt for her was now mixed with the pain of betrayal. And in the midst of it all, there was Lily, our daughter, our light. For her sake, I needed to discover the truth and act in a way that ensured her well-being. The process of collecting evidence was slow and painful. Every message read, every conversation recorded was another blow to my heart. But I knew I needed to keep going. He needed to understand the extent of Emily's betrayal before taking any action. And most of all, he needed to protect Lily, make sure she wasn't affected by this approaching storm. While Emily continued with her routine, oblivious to what I knew, I carefully planned my next steps. The opportunity to unmask her would arise, and I would be ready. The truth would come out, and then I could finally confront the woman I once loved more than anything. When I reviewed our story, pain settled deep in my chest. Remembering how it all started with Emily made me wonder where it all went wrong. Our life seemed perfect. I remember our first meeting, a simple coffee that turned into hours of conversation. From that day on, it seemed like we were destined to be together. Every birthday, every holiday, the moments we spent with our daughter, Lily, it was hard to believe that it could all be a hoax. One day, while going through old photos, I came across that image of the three of us on the beach, smiling carefree. It was the summer when Lily was just 4 years old. I remember how she ran across the sand, her laughter echoing in the air, and Emily and I watched happily. "Do you think she will always be like this, so happy?" Emily asked at the time. With parents like us, of course it is, I replied, full of confidence in our future. But now, it all seemed like a lie. Emily continued her days as if nothing had changed, as if I were the same naive husband as before. She still kissed me on the cheek every morning, still made coffee, still played with Lily as if our family was unshakable. At moments like these, I almost doubted what I had heard. I almost thought I was imagining things. But then he remembered her words on the phone, and the anger and sadness came back with a vengeance. "Good morning, love. Did you sleep well?" Emily asked one morning as she put toast on the table. "Yes, I slept. And you?" I replied, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "Also, I have a meeting this afternoon, so I might arrive a little later." "I get it. Take care of yourself." These small, everyday interactions were hard to bear. Her every word seemed to carry a second meaning, and I found myself trying to decipher the truth behind every smile and gesture. But I had to keep up the facade, at least for now. It was one of these afternoons, when Emily left for her meeting, that I decided to check her phone. The recording app once silently installed on him had captured several conversations. My heart was racing as I listened to the messages. Emily's voice, sweet and caring, was now a sound that repulsed me. "I know James. He doesn't suspect anything. We just need to be careful. I don't want anything to go wrong," she said in one of the recordings. My blood boiled with every word. She planned everything so carefully that it was hard to believe this was the same woman with whom I shared 10 years of my life. Text messages were no less devastating. "I can't pretend with him anymore," one of them said. "I need you, James. Let's do this soon." Every word was a stab in my heart. The confirmation of the betrayal and threat against me was there, clear and undeniable. All these records were more than enough to prove Emily's infidelity. But what worried me most was the idea that she wanted to get rid of me. I needed to find out how far she was willing to go. My love for Lily was my guide. I needed to protect her from whatever storm was coming. With my mind racing with thoughts and my heart heavy, I knew this was just the beginning. I needed to act cautiously. Emily couldn't find out that I knew everything, at least not yet. Every step had to be calculated, every movement precise. So, with my entire being consumed by this new reality, I put the phone back down and went about my day, pretending to be normal while my internal world fell apart. When I finally managed to compose myself, the first person I thought of was Michael. He had been my best friend since college, and even though I was devastated, I needed someone to trust. I called him, trying to hide the desperation in my voice. "Michael, can you come here? I need to talk urgently," I asked, my voice wavering. Michael arrived within minutes, and as soon as he walked in, I knew he noticed something wrong. He looked me in the eyes, seeking an explanation. "John, what happened? You look like a ghost," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. I told him everything, from discovering Emily's betrayal to the threatening messages I found. Michael listened attentively, without interrupting, and when I finished, he sighed deeply. "John, this is serious. You need more proof before taking any action. You can't just accuse her without being absolutely sure of everything," he advised, with a tone of concern. I agreed, realizing he was right. I needed to make sure my actions were justified. Michael helped me think of ways to gather more evidence without raising suspicion. We agreed that I would continue to act normally at home, while he would help me monitor any suspicious activity. Over the next few days, I began acting colder and more distant toward Emily. It wasn't easy. Every moment by his side was torture. She noticed the change in my behavior and tried to talk about it. "John, you've been so distant lately. Everything is fine?" asked Emily, with a worried expression. "I'm just tired, Emily. Work has been very stressful," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. She seemed to accept the explanation, but I knew suspicion was beginning to grow. I continued with the plan, waiting for the right moment to catch Emily in the act. One night, while Emily was in the shower, I saw a message coming in on her phone. It was from her lover, arranging a meeting for the next day. My heart raced, but I remained calm. Now he had the perfect opportunity. The next day, I discreetly followed Emily to the meeting place. She parked at a small cafe in the center of town and went inside, looking around nervously. I waited a few minutes before going in too, trying not to be noticed. When I walked in, I saw Emily sitting at a table in the corner, chatting animatedly with a man I recognized from the photos I'd found. It was James. I took out my cell phone and began discreetly taking photos, each click reinforcing the evidence I was gathering. His heart was pounding in his chest, a mixture of anger and sadness. After a few minutes, I decided to leave before they noticed me. I got back in the car and drove away, trying to process everything I had seen. When I got home, Michael was already there, waiting for me. "So, did you get anything?" he asked, anxiously. I showed him the photos and audio I had recorded. Michael analyzed everything carefully and agreed that I had enough evidence. "Now you need to think about how to use this to your advantage. Talk to a lawyer before confronting her," Michael suggested. I knew he was right. I needed to be smart about this. The confrontation would come, but not before I was fully prepared. And in the meantime, I would continue to keep up appearances, even if every day at Emily's side was a blow to my heart. When I got out of the car, my heart was pounding. I knew I was about to witness something that would change my life forever. With camera in hand, I strategically hid behind a bush, keeping a clear view of the restaurant where Emily and her lover, James, were sitting. Through the windows, I could see the soft glow of candles on the table, reflecting an atmosphere that, to any casual observer, would appear romantic and innocent. But for me, it was a betrayal scenario. As I adjusted the focus of the camera, my thoughts ran wild. How could she do this? After everything we've been through together, after building a life and a family, how could she be so cruel? My fingers shook as I pressed the shutter button, capturing images I never wanted to see but knew were necessary. Each photo was a direct blow to my heart, but also a vital piece in building my case. When Emily leaned in to kiss James, I almost let out a pained moan. The scene before me was confirmation of all my suspicions, irrefutable proof that my marriage was in shambles. I continued to photograph, each click of the camera being a step closer to the truth. After getting the photos I needed, I slowly backed away, making sure I wasn't seen. I went back to the car and sat for a few minutes, trying to control the avalanche of emotions. I needed to think clearly. I decided the next step was to consult a divorce lawyer. The next day, I sat across from a renowned lawyer, Mr. Thompson. He was a middle-aged man with thin-rimmed glasses and a serious expression. I explained the whole situation, showing him the photos and recordings I had collected. "John, you have a solid case here," he said, flipping through the evidence. "But we need to carefully plan our next steps. You mentioned that Emily talked about getting rid of you. That's something we can use to your advantage." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and despair. "Yes, but I don't want this to turn into an ugly battle. My main concern is Lily." Mr. Thompson looked at me sympathetically. "I understand. We will do our best to make sure you get custody of Lily. But be prepared, this may not be easy. Emily could try to use anything against you." I returned home that night with a head full of worries and legal strategies. The tension between Emily and I was palpable. She seemed more alert, as if she sensed something was wrong. One particularly difficult night, as we were eating dinner, she watched me with a piercing gaze. "John, you look different. Does something bother you?" she asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. I took a sip of water to save time. "It's work. It's stressful," I lied, trying to keep up the facade. She didn't seem convinced, but she didn't insist. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last. Emily began to act more cautious. Her calls became shorter and her meetings with James more discreet. But I knew I had enough to move on. Finally, one night, while I was in the office trying to collect my thoughts, Emily came in and closed the door behind her. "John, we need to talk," she said, her voice filled with something I couldn't identify. I turned in my chair, facing her. "Yes, Emily, we do." And it was there, in that small office, that I felt the inevitable confrontation was about to happen. But I knew it wasn't the right time yet. There was more to be revealed, more pieces to fit into this puzzle of betrayal and lies. That night, the tension was palpable. I had prepared a special dinner, something I rarely did, to create the perfect atmosphere for the confrontation. Emily was in the kitchen, finishing preparing the salad, while I adjusted the table with almost surgical precision. I placed the cutlery and plates with forced calm, trying to control the internal storm that consumed me. When Emily finally sat down at the table, I offered a weak smile, which she returned with some suspicion. "You look strange, John. Everything is fine?" she asked, while pouring the wine. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk, Emily, about something very serious." She stopped for a moment, her eyes fixed on mine. I could have sworn I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes, but she quickly covered it up by taking a sip of wine. "Of course, John." What there was. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table and interlacing my fingers. As I spoke, I felt my heart beating faster. "I know about you and James. I know everything, Emily." For a second, she looked petrified, but soon regained her composure, shaking her head in denial. "What are you talking about? I don't know who James is." I took my phone out of my pocket and with one tap showed him the photos and recordings I had collected. Her face turned pale, and she couldn't look away from the screen. "I installed a recording app on your phone, and I followed you to that restaurant. I have enough evidence to confirm the betrayal." She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply before opening them again. When he spoke, his voice trembled slightly. "John, she began, but I interrupted her. "Don't you dare lie again, Emily. I want the truth." She let out a long sigh, as if she were carrying a huge weight. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and shaky. "Yes, I was cheating on you with James. But you need to understand, John. I was unhappy. Our marriage, it wasn't the same anymore." My anger boiled, but I tried to remain calm. "And you thought the solution was to betray me? And this get rid of me thing? What the hell does that mean, Emily?" She shook her head desperately. "I never wanted to hurt you physically, John. I was talking about divorce. I wanted custody of Lily, but I would never do anything to truly hurt you. I just didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid." The pain on his face seemed genuine, but my heart was too broken to feel any empathy. I got up from the table and started walking around the room, trying to process everything. "We had a life together, Emily. One daughter. How could you do this to us?" She let out a sob, tears streaming down her face. "I got lost, John. I got lost in all of this. James made me feel alive again. But I know it was wrong. I know I hurt you. I just didn't know how to get out of this situation." I looked at her, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Emily. But one thing is certain. I want a divorce. And I will fight for custody of Lily. She doesn't deserve to go through this." She nodded slowly, accepting the inevitable. The scene in front of me felt surreal, like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But at the same time, the decision brought me a strange sense of relief. Finally, I was taking control of my life again. As I walked away from the table, I heard Emily whisper, "I'm sorry, John." In truth, without looking back, I replied, "I feel it too, Emily. For us." And so, that night, what was left of our marriage fell apart once and for all, leaving only the shadows of what it once was. I was sitting on the living room couch, staring blankly at the wall as I tried to process everything that had happened. Emily, the woman with whom I had shared the last 10 years of my life, was involved in a case of treason and conspiracy. I felt betrayed, furious, but also incredibly sad about the impact this would all have on our daughter, Lily. "John, please don't do this," Emily begged, standing in the doorway with her bags packed. "I know I messed up, but we can work this out. Think about Lily." "I'm thinking about Lily," I replied, my voice cool and controlled. "And that's why you need to leave. This isn't healthy for her. She doesn't deserve to grow up in an environment full of lies and betrayal." Emily sighed but didn't say anything else. She knew that any attempt to argue would be futile. With one last desperate look, she left the house, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The following days were a mix of chaos and tense calm. I started the divorce process and made sure to keep the house as stable as possible for Lily. She was my priority, and I would do anything to protect her from this emotional storm. It was then that the situation took an unexpected turn. Emily tried to retaliate, threatening to fight for custody of Lily and claiming that I was not a suitable father. I knew it would be an uphill battle, but I was determined to fight until the end. However, something even more surprising was about to be revealed. James, Emily's lover, was not just a man involved in an extramarital affair. He had his own nefarious intentions. One afternoon, while I was in my lawyer's office discussing next steps, I received a call from an unknown number. "John, it's me, James." The voice on the other end sounded strained. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to talk to you about," I replied dryly, preparing to hang up. "It's about Emily. And also about Michael," he said quickly before I could cut the call. This caught my attention. "What do you mean, Michael?" I asked, now more interested. "Meet me at Central Park in an hour. I'll explain everything," he said, hanging up before I could respond. Reluctantly, I went to the meeting, curious to know what he had to say. James was there, looking nervous and uneasy. "I was using Emily to get money from you," he confessed immediately, bluntly. "But I wasn't the only one. Michael was helping me the whole time." "Michael? My best friend?" I asked in disbelief. "Why?" "Because he was in debt and needed money quickly," James explained. "I promised him a cut if he would help me manipulate Emily into our trap." The revelation left me speechless. Michael, the person I trusted most, was betraying me along with James and Emily. It was almost impossible to believe. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, still processing everything. "Because Michael is about to confess everything to the police in exchange for a lesser sentence," James said, looking at the floor. "He's already been caught, and I know my turn will come too. I just thought you should know the truth before everything comes out." I left the park with a mix of emotions. I went straight to the police station, where I confirmed that Michael had indeed confessed everything. He was willing to cooperate with the police, which resulted in James being arrested and me gaining full custody of Lily. I returned home that night feeling a huge weight on my shoulders, but also a sense of relief. I knew there was still a long way to go, but at least now, with all the traitors out of our lives, I could start rebuilding a better future for Lily and myself.